Stowaway Chapter 12 A Unanimous Decision. With Kat's help, Baz dragged the bounty hunter to the end of the bridge, propping her unconscious body against the tower's wall, and out of the wind. "We shouldn't just leave her here. She wants to kill you, you know," Kat said, taking Zinnia's rifle for herself. "When she wakes up, she won't be happy." "I realize that," Baz said, "but it's complicated. We have a history. Besides, by the time she does wake up, we will be long gone." He didn't say where they would be gone to. There was the more pressing matter of the hole in Boo's shoulder to attend to. "Clean shot," the captain said, giving a cursory examination. "We'll get you patched up when we get back to the Icarus. Think you can make it?" The Quilletti shrugged the non-blasted shoulder. "It's just one arm. More where that came from." Leo hoped if he ever got shot with a laser blast, he'd have a sense of humor about it, though he really hoped it never came to that. The bridge was easier to cross with no bounty hunters trying to stop them, though the crosswind still proved a worthy adversary. As they passed the second of two drones Kat shot down, Boo kicked it through the still smoldering gap in the railing. "Next time," he said, "we fight on solid ground." "Since when do we get to pick our fights?" Kat asked. As they made their way across the tower to the landing platform, Leo couldn't help but glance behind him every third step, though he wasn't sure what he expected to see. More of Zinnia's drones, Gerard Grimsley, with a posse of refurbished security bots, a band of Jark soldiers. 3 weeks ago, the idea that he had enemies, that there were people out there set against him, Leo Fender seemed absurd. Yes, there was a war. Leo knew it as well as anyone, and he had lost more than most, but it hadn't really been his war to fight. This felt different. He felt cornered, haunted, hunted, father taken, brother gone, and now people were looking for him specifically. He's especially interested in the kid. This is what it was like to live your life looking over your shoulder, he thought, always wondering if those standing behind you were really on your side or not, living with this constant slush of dread churning in your stomach. But every glance behind him only showed Kat, hunched over the wind, her new rifle slung over her shoulder. "Keep going, Leo," she said. "It's okay. I've got your back." Finally, they made it to the landing platform, though the Icarus no longer had the place to herself. "Well, kiss my grits," Baz said. "I've done enough kissing today," Boo replied. Leo studied the star-shaped fighter, sharing the landing platform with the pirate ship, gleaming silver and studded with cannons and missiles, looking small and sleek, beside Bastion's busted yellow pair. It was obviously Zinnia's, guessing by Baz's reaction, and it looked even faster than the Icarus. It was definitely prettier, newer, and probably worth a lot more. "Are we going to steal it?" Leo asked. All three of the pirates looked at him. Kat grinned. "Leo Fender, did you honestly just suggest taking something that doesn't belong to you? A ship, no less?" Leo shook his head, realizing his mistake. No, I meant you. Are you going to steal it?" "It would keep her off our tail," Kat suggested. "It would," Baz replied, "but I wouldn't be caught dead flying that thing. It looks like a toy. Plus, it's not my color. I do like the idea of her not being able to follow us, though. And we are out of E." He flashed Kat a look. "I'll take care of Boo and find that tracking device." "Good. Take the kid with you," Baz said, nodding toward Leo. "And do me a favor and send Skits out here. I'm sure she wouldn't turn down a chance to vent a little." Back in the Icarus, Boo sat on the edge of the table in the mess area, now serving as a temporary sickbay, gently prodding the edges of his wound. "It's not that bad," he said. "Mostly cauterized already. I'll be fine." It looked pretty bad to Leo. He was surprised to see the Quilletti blood was red. Not all aliens had red blood. Ikari blood was silver, like mercury. Some aliens didn't bleed at all. But beyond the charred and blackened hole in Boo's robe, past the burned flesh and fur, Leo could see traces of deep crimson blooming. "It's getting treated whether you like it or not," Kat said, as she dug around cabinets and crates gathering supplies. She helped Boo remove his robe and examined the wound, looking not at all squeamish herself. Leo guessed she had seen worse. In fact, he knew she had. "Too bad your hair will cover it," she said. This is going to be a cool scar. Oh, I've got scars. Yeah, but what good are they if you can't see them? Kat said, brandishing her bionic arm. How will people know not to mess with you? Boo shrugged his massive muscular frame. Somehow they just know. He turned and winked at Leo. Since you're just standing there, shiprat, come give me a hand. Kat gave Leo a plastic tube, the same medicine they had on board the Beagle designed to prevent infection, numb pain, and stimulate the regrowth of tissue all at once. Another marvel of the Ikari gave to a planet that had been relying on band-aids and fiberglass casts. Squeeze a big dollop of the stuff right on the wound, she said, then rub it a little. Boo looked at Leo and slowly shook his head. Yeah, I don't know if that's such a good idea, Leo said. Kat's hands went to her hips. She glared at the Quilletti. You're seriously going to be a baby about this? That stuff smells terrible, Boo protested, and it makes me itch. That's how you know it's working, you lug. Now, are you going to let Leo put that stuff on you, or am I going to have to hold you down? Kat gave Boo a hard stare, and a tense silence settled between them. He had 20 inches, an extra functional arm, and at least 200 pounds on the first mate. He could probably pick her up by one hand and toss her off the ship if he wanted to, in true bouncer fashion. But she had that look on her face, and that tone in her voice, and that was enough. Fine, but make it quick. Leo dabbed the odoriferous ointment on the open wound, trying not to look. Boo in the eyes and ignoring his low rumbling growl. Kat followed with a bandage, wrapping it clear around the hairy shoulder. Leo didn't want to think about how much it would hurt when somebody pulled it off, hoping that somebody wasn't him. I'm going to go find that tracker. You make sure he keeps that on and doesn't pick at it, Kat ordered. Right, Leo said, as if there was a single thing he could do to stop him. But Leo didn't need to worry. Boo didn't fidget with his bandage or scratch at the edges. He simply leaned back on two hands and closed his eyes. After a moment, he whispered, Saijin. I know that word, Leo said. Bass said it came from your people. He said it was like doing a good deed. So he does listen to me sometimes, Boo said with a snort. Back on my planet, Saijin wasn't just a word. It's a way of life, a path that the Quilletti strive to follow. It's a part of everything we do, and unfortunately, it is not the path I've chosen. But I still know it when I see it, and I recognize when a debt is owed. Leo shook his head. Oh, no, listen. If this is about what happened at the bridge, it's not a big deal. Honestly, I don't even know what I was thinking. And really, it was Kat who pulled you up. It was Kat who pulled me up, Boo agreed. But yours was the first hand I saw, and that is Saijin. Boo reached out, one of his own hands, the one with the bandaged arm, though it clearly hurt to move, and placed it flat against Leo's chest. A day later, Leo would have flinched, fearing the Quilletti was about to crush his ribs, but now he stood still, felt the weight of Boo's hand. It was comforting in its way. You have a strong heart, Leo Fender, he said. It has a beautiful rhythm. Thanks? No, thank you. Boo removed his giant hand from Leo's chest, then examined the hole in his yunkai from the laser blast. This will be impossible to mend properly, I'm afraid. The wound will heal, but the fabric used for these robes can only be found on my planet. I suppose I will have to live with it. Leo thought about the hole in his now burned to ashes shirt, the one where the patch had been. One large planet surrounding by a dozen smaller ones. The patch was still in his pocket. Many planets, one mission, one enemy, one cause. Maybe you could go back, he said, to your planet, to Quell. Go back and get it fixed, or get a new one. I cannot go back there, Boo replied. My people would not accept me. I did a terrible thing, committed an act of violence against my own kind. It was unforgivable. My mother taught me that almost anything is forgivable as long as you try to make amends for it, Leo said. Boo shook his head. Not where I come from. On Quell, any act of violence against one's own is cause for banishment. We are mostly peaceful people. We have no soldiers, no warships, we fashion no weapons, save the tools we use to farm with. There are no precious resources hiding within our planet's crust, as there are with yours. I think that is why we were not given invite to the coalition. why the Akari did not share their gifts with us as they did with you. That can't be right, Leo thought, still thinking of his patch. No, the coalition is for everyone, he said. Not for everyone. Only for those with something to give in return. Which is fine, but it is not Saijin. The Quileti wove one finger through the hole in his robe. Perhaps it is better this way, he said. Now people will definitely know not to mess with me. Leo studied the bloodstain on his own borrowed shirt. He wondered if his patch would cover it. They both had turned at the sound of Baz's boots, tromping up the ramp. Skits rolled up behind him, holding a crate similar to the one Boo had toted around Caber's Point. She was loaded. 4 whole crates of cores. 4 whole cores, the captain said triumphantly. We drained her dry. And we trashed the cockpit, Skit said, sounding uncharacteristically cheerful. You trashed the cockpit, Baz corrected. I trashed the cockpit, and it was so much fun, Skit's head swiveled, showing off her menacing smile. Leo decided the robot wasn't just temperamental. She was also a little insane. Baz pointed to the bandage on Boo's arm. All good here? Boo grumbled. It itches, apparently, Leo translated for him. And the medicine stinks. Well, next time, maybe don't get shot, Baz suggested. Easy for you to say. You're a smaller target. I don't know about that, Baz said. I'm going to go help Kat locate the tracker. Skits, you make sure those cores get locked into the jump drive. Lift off in 5. Ship meeting in 10. All crew, all required to attend. He looked directly at Leo when he said the last part. Leo had scars. Most of them were plain to see. The one on his chin, shaped like a comma, earned him from slipping off his hoverboard and planting his face on the curb. The pink and white patches on his knees, from more of the same. The zigzag of white across his shin, from looking behind him while running from his brother and catching the corner of a table. The wood sinking in like a shark tooth, tearing a gash 2 inches long that had to be glued together. And the one below his elbow, from falling off the top of the car. He and Gareth had been playing space explorers, using the car as their ship. An asteroid had struck the hull, and Leo had been sent out into the cold grip of space to make necessary repairs. 7-year-old Leo crawled out of the airlock. Their parents told them to roll the windows down, and pulled himself to the roof. His tree branch pistol now acted as a blowtorch as he sealed the hull shut, but he slipped on his way back into the ship. Gravity was still a force to be reckoned with, it seemed, and so was the cement driveway. He must have landed just right, or just wrong. Leo's forearm broke in 3 places, the pain searing and sudden. It was that kind of break that, it happened 20 years ago, would have meant a graft, plus a cast, and months with added months of physical therapy. But Leo was born in a different age. The Ikari had perfected bone regeneration, an outpatient surgical procedure involving a chemical compound of their own design and an incision no longer and bigger than Leo's fingernail. In 4 days, he was tossing the baseball with Gareth in the backyard again. The Fenders thanked their human doctor, of course, but she had the same thing. Such treatment wouldn't have been possible before the Ikari arrived. They were the ones who deserved thanks. It was that way with everything, it seemed. So many gifts bestowed upon humanity, handed down literally from on high, and all it cost them was the earth beneath their feet. Leo's arm was as good as new, the scar barely noticeable. You had to look closely to find the spot where the skin was slightly paler, thicker, like a well-worn trail. Most of the time, Leo discovered it by absent-mindedly scratching at it. He had quite a few scars, but the one on his arm was the only one that itched, and it reminded him of a time that he and his brother went into space, and Leo saved their lives. The tracker was finally located, detached, and left on the landing platform. If anyone else was using a transmission to locate the Icarus, it would bring them all the way to Vestra. There they could find a cheap drink at a local watering hole, a ticked-off bounty hunter, and plenty of red dust. But they wouldn't find the Icarus, its captain, or its crew. A crew that was certainly huddled in the cockpit of the ship, already putting some distance between itself and the wind-weary planet. Baz sat in the pilot's seat as usual, flip-flopped feet resting on the console. Cat sitting beside him. Leo stood next to Boo, who was back in his damaged robe, savoring a second cup of gyrt. Leo's cup was still waiting for him, and Boo insisted on saving it for later. The Icarus still sat in orbit around Vestra. It hadn't made a jump yet. To make a jump, you needed a destination. Leo knew you needed coordinates. Of course, coordinates they had. They just hadn't decided what to do with them. Bastion Black was uncharacteristically quiet. He wasn't even drumming on the controls. It was for the first time that Leo had seen him sitting there without a song in his head, which meant, as far as Leo could judge by the straight faces of the crew, minus Skits, of course, that there was something particularly heavy weighing on the captain's mind. Leo guessed that something heavy was him. "Something's not right here," he finally said. Bass seemed to be talking to himself, forgetting that everyone could hear him in the Icarus's cockpit. "I don't get it," he said louder this time, fixing his eyes on Leo. "Help me out here. Why would Gerard Grimsley put a bounty on you?" Leo shook his head. "The one that had a price on it," though he had no idea why. "I don't think it's because you've been tagging along with us, and it's not just because you helped us escape. There's something else going on. Sin called you out, said she had to bring you in alive." Leo didn't need to be reminded. He could still hear Baz's bounty hunter ex-girlfriend calling his name. Could still picture her rifle pointed at his direction. "Why was she after you?" Baz asked. "I don't know." Black's voice turned icy. "Don't lie to me, Leo. What does Grimsley want with you?" "I'm not lying," Leo insisted. "Ease up, Baz. The kid doesn't know. Besides, maybe it's not Grimsley who wants him," Kat suggested. "Maybe the Ikari are looking for him, and they're going outside of the coalition for help. Grimsley doesn't care who he works for as long as he gets paid." Leo could believe that, though he doubted the coalition would stoop to working with the likes of Gerard Grimsley just to find one kid. Then again, Leo never thought the coalition would stoop to working with two criminal networker jackers either, but Devin Mack had claimed otherwise. He could feel Black's stare pressing on him. "I don't know. Maybe why he would be after me unless it has something to do with you. Maybe we could go back down and wake up your girlfriend and ask her." "That sounds like a bad idea," Boo said. "Yeah, especially when she sees what I did to her ship," Skits added. Baz shook his head, eyes still focused on Leo. "Let's go back to the beginning. A Jark raiding party attacks your ship, a research vessel, crippling it. They take your V, your weapons, standard practice, but only one prisoner, your father. Why?" "I already told you, I don't know that either." "But there must be a reason, Leo. You said he was a scientist. What was he working on?" "Something with Ventasium," Leo sputtered. "Finding alternatives to it? Or ways to make it stronger?" "He didn't talk about it much. Said most of it was classified. He joked that it was above our pay grade." That is, when his father talked about his work. Most of the time he kept to himself, and Leo hardly ever bothered to ask. Maybe he should have. "Classified. Now that sounds interesting," Skits chimed in. "Which might explain why the Jarks wanted him, but it doesn't explain why someone's looking for you," Boo said. "Unless they think Leo can somehow point them to his father," Kat said. "Which, now, of course, he can. At least we can, if that's the play." Leo could feel all eyes on him now, even the robot's unblinking sensors. "Believe me, I'm just as lost as you are," he said. "All I know is that my dad's out there, and he needs help. He needs my help. I need yours," Leo thought. "Or at least I need somebody's, because I can't do this alone." "Tell me something, Leo," Baz said. "Your father, is he a good man?" Leo blinked. "A good man? What is Bastion Black? A wanted pirate? A thief? A deserter from the coalition? What would he consider good?" "He cares about people," Leo said. He thought about it for a moment, then added, "And not just me and Gareth. Everyone. He really wants to make the universe a better place." "Good luck with that," Skit said, earning her looks from everyone this time. "What? I'm just saying, the universe kind of sucks." No one bothered to disagree with her. "He's a good dad, too, if that's what you're asking," Leo added. "I just want him back." Leo watched the captain's eyes. The Ikari's eyes changed color depending on their mood. Humans weren't so easy to read. Bastion Black was almost impossible. But Leo thought he caught something there, a flash of sympathy or regret or resignation. He'd seen it before when he first agreed to take Leo back to the ship, and then again when he took back the case holding his medal. It was the look of someone who had lost something essential. Leo knew that look well. All right, Leo. If that's the case, then I think we have two options. Option one, we find a way to smuggle you and the data chip into Coalition hands without getting caught, hoping that if we do get caught, they will repay our generosity by not executing us right there on the spot. Sounds like an iffy plan, Kat said. You haven't heard the option number two yet, Baz said. What's option number two? Boo asked. We go in there and get Leo's father ourselves. Baz's second suggestion was met with silence all around. Leo wasn't sure he'd heard the captain correctly. A rescue mission? From a Jark base? That was a little more iffy. That was insane. Why would Baz even suggest it? Would he really risk his life, his ship, his crew, just to help some stowaway? Skits was the first to speak up. You forgot option 3, she said. Dump the kid back on the rock below us and conveniently forget we ever met him. That's not an option, Boo said shortly. Says who? You're not the captain. This isn't your ship. This kid saved my life. And we saved his, even Steven. We're not marooning him, Kat seconded. But the robot was adamant. Why not? He's not our problem. He's the Coalition's problem. So is his father. Why should we do their dirty work? Because we wouldn't be doing it for the Coalition, Kat said. We'd be doing it for Leo, who is part of the Coalition, who is a person who had lost his entire family, and we have a chance to do something about it. To at least bring the two of them back together, Kat said. Besides, I think I remember helping him to push your crippled metal butt back into the ship at Caber's Point. I'm pretty sure you weren't his problem then either. That shut the robot up, at least for the moment. The question is, do we trust the Ikari and the Coalition to go in and get him? Boo asked. They certainly have more resources than we do. Baz shook his head. I don't trust the Ikari to save anyone, but that's just me. Still, we are talking about an awfully big risk here. He looked at Leo. Not sure it's worth it. Leo looked down at his Coalition boots, the soles worn, the laces untied, as they almost always were. He thought of his father finding him in the driveway after his fall that one day, curled up and crying and clutching his broken arm, scooping Leo up and setting him gently in the car, his panicked brother sitting in the back seat, desperate to explain. We were just playing spaceship. He was on the roof. I don't know what happened. His father's voice soothing, telling him he wasn't mad and that everything would be okay. You're all right. Nothing that can't be fixed. Leo glanced back up at the captain. Worth it? For Black and his crew? Leo didn't see how it could be. But for him, it wasn't even a question. He's all I have left, Leo said. The cockpit grew quiet again, and finally Kat turned to Baz. You're the captain. You give the orders. No, not this time. This time we all have to agree. So what's going to be, Kat? You up for a jailbreak? Leo caught the suggestion of a smile on the girl's face. I've never broken anyone out of a Jark prison before, she said. Could be fun. You know, provided we don't die. Bo and Maza? Ocardo? Leo felt one of the alien's weighty paws rest on his shoulder. I have seen too many families torn apart, too many children without their parents. I would see House Fender restored if possible, and like you, I'm not sure I trust anyone else to do it. Bastion Black nodded. Then he turned to face Skits. What about you? Seriously, you're not giving the robot a vote, Kat said. She's just as much a part of this crew as the rest of us. Leo knew what Skits was going to say. They were pirates, after all. Their only responsibility was to each other. Deep down in her electrodes, Skits understood that. Deep down, Leo understood it too. But even a temperamental robot can surprise you. Skits swiveled her head from Leo to Baz, back and forth. Her speaker emitted something like an electronic sigh. Will you at least let me off this ship this time? Yes, Baz said. If we do this, it's going to be all hands on deck. If the robot had eyeballs, Leo was sure she would be rolling them. Fine, she said. We can go rescue the Stowaway's father, I guess. Leo was struck with a shiver. He could hardly believe it. Cat looked at him with raised eyebrows as if to say, "Here we go." Boo gave his shoulder a squeeze. Bastion Black shrugged. "Guess that settles it then." He removed the data chip from his jacket and fed the coordinates into the ship. "Let's rock and roll!" Once they made the jump, and Leo nearly lost it all over Boo's robe again, Baz insisted that everyone try to get some rest. It had been nearly 2 Earth days since most of them had slept. At least it had been for Leo, and the captain wanted his crew to be sharp. There was no way Leo could be expected to sleep, not knowing where they were headed, what they were about to do. But even as his befuddled brain insisted it was fruitless, he felt his body argue otherwise. Just the thought of lying down in a bed, soft or not, made his muscles groan. The moment he started climbing into the top bunk, Leo realized that he was spent. He lay there for a moment, eyes fixed on the metal ceiling. He'd never had the top bunk before. During summer camp, some other kid always beat him to it. And on board the Beagle, the upper bunk was claimed by Gareth, the elder and heir to the bed of his choice. Leo assumed there was something he was missing. Something mystical, something enchanting about the top bunk. There wasn't. It was actually worse, with hardly any room to move or even breathe. Or maybe he just wasn't used to it. Leo remembered going on a vacation with his family and staying in a nice hotel with queen-size beds and mountains of pillows. But it didn't matter. They were never as cozy as his old mattress at home. There's comfort in familiarity, but not always. Dr. Fender spent his nights on the couch after Leo's mother died. He never said why, but Leo guessed he just couldn't bring himself to sleep in the bed that they'd shared anymore. Leo would wake up and wander downstairs to find his father curled fetal, a blanket covering him only from the knees down, or maybe he'd just kicked into a ball on the floor. He would see his dad shivering, and he would unfold the blanket and pull it up to his father's chin. And each time he pulled up the blanket, Leo remembered something his father had said to him, not long after his mother was gone. "I can't take care of you, Leo. Not by myself. But we can take care of each other." Even greater than his faith in the coalition was his faith in their family, and their ability to hold it together, the three of them, inseparable. Some nights Leo would grab his own pillow and blanket and lie down on the floor beside him, just so he could fall asleep to the sound of his father breathing, a steady reassurance that he was there and always would be. Leo was remembering this when the door hissed and Boo entered, throwing himself on the bottom bunk, causing the whole metal frame to shake. Leo looked over the side to see a pair of hairy feet hanging well over the edge. There was no blanket on board the Icarus long enough to cover him, it seemed. He must have sensed Leo was still awake because he spoke with his gentle purr. "We're going to get him, Leo," he said. Leo sniffed. Suddenly, he felt cold up there, all by himself, cold and alone. He knew there was hardly any room, and he had no idea how Boo would react, but he crawled off the bunk anyway and silently squeezed himself next to the alien on the bottom. Leo felt 2 big arms coil around him, warmer than any blanket could ever be. Allegiance to the coalition and its ideals is unconditional. Any desertion or attempt to desert shall be met, if the offense is committed in time of war, by such punishment as a court-martial may direct. Deserters found assisting the enemy will be tried for treason, and, if found guilty, shall always be punished by death. Coalition Military Statute 588, Article 5, last revised Earth Year 2053.